So hi everyone, my name is Pratik and I'll be taking up the news today discussion for 22nd August. So before we start discussion in detail, here are the headlines. The first major news is India's transformed defense and internal security posture. Second, India's need for comprehensive national space legislation. Third, Kerala achieves 100% digital literacy. Fourth, Parliamentary Standing Committee report on cybercrimes. Fifth, CCPA imposes penalty on Rapido. Sixth, visit of India's external affairs ministers to Russia. And the place is in news, that is Lebanon. And then we'll also take up some of the quick updates as well. So starting with India's transformed defense and internal security posture. So recently PIB has released a report on how India's defense and internal security posture has transformed. And in that report, it has mentioned three major areas, right? So these three areas or these three paradigms are the ones that are guiding the major policy initiatives that India is taking with respect to defense and internal security. So these measures are: first, clarity of purpose. Second is in terms of increasing the strength or deterrence. And the third major posture or the transformation is in terms of self-reliance or Atmanirbharta. So we can discuss or we can understand all the major developments or all the major transformation with these three ideas or core ideas. So when it comes to clarity of purpose, especially after Operation Sindoor, India has a very specific way in which India will be handling terrorism. But even before that, India has provided its resolve in addressing cross-border terror issues. So here we'll talk about the major development in this regard. Then with respect to strengthening or deterrence, we'll talk about the major development as far as India's defense capability is concerned. Thirdly, we'll talk about self-reliance or the measure for Atmanirbharta. What are the measures that are taken in this regard? When it comes to the syllabus mapping, of course, this is part of General Studies 3 paper, Defense and Internal Security. And also, because this topic links to India-Pakistan relations, it will be part of GS paper 2 as well. So let's take a look at the major development with this framework. So the first framework is with respect to increasing India's defense capacity or capability. So within this, if you look at the development, so earlier India was a major arms importing country or a destination. But now the transformation is that we have become or we have started spending a lot on increasing the capability, right? So in terms of the expenditure, you can see that from 2.53 lakh in 2013-14, the expenditure has jumped to 6.81 lakh. So we have started to spend a lot on defense manufacturing, design, and investment. Third, the focus is on domestic production, which has now been tripled to 1.5 lakh crore in 10 years. You can see this diagram as well. Then when it comes to the reforms, especially when it comes to improving the Atmanirbharta or self-reliance, we have started with the defense acquisition procedure in 2020, which means that now instead of buying from the foreign entities, we will incentivize the countries of different countries to come and make in India. And therefore, the Buy Indian focus is there as part of DAP. Secondly, we have Srijan portal, which essentially prioritizes those items which are critically important for India's purpose, and therefore it incentivizes the MSME sector or the local sector or the local entrepreneurs to manufacture it. Then we also have positive indigenization list. So essentially these measures seek to promote self-reliance. Thirdly, in terms of export, India has achieved phenomenal growth in terms of the number is 34 times growth, right? So this number is close to, and this is going to more than 100 plus nations, including US, France, Armenia. In fact, India also exports several weapons, strategic weapons, to countries in East Asia as well. Then when it comes to key reforms with respect to enhancing the capability, we have liberalized the FDI for capital and tech inflow. So it is now, in 2014, the 74 FDI is permitted through automatic route, which means that there is no requirement, or there is no requirement for government approval in this area. And 100% FDI is also permitted in certain high-tech area, which is required by India through government approval. So again, this is in alignment with increasing India's strength in defense manufacturing and defense capability. Also, India is promoting not just the supply and defense manufacturing. India is also improving or trying to establish the expansion in innovation through IDEX. And with IDEX, what the government is doing is it is trying to support the startups and MSME sector to innovate and provide cost-effective defense equipments along with technology development fund. So these measures essentially are doing two things: enhancing India's capability, and secondly, they are also enhancing India's self-reliance. Next, all these measures for proactive counterterrorism, this essentially shows that India is providing strategic clarity when it comes to defense measures. So here, first thing is that we have taken very firm responses vis-a-vis the terrorist attack that has happened. So for example, after Uri, surgical strikes were undertaken that showed India's resolve that India will not be undermined by nuclear blackmail. Pulwama led to breaching India or using India air strikes in Balakot, which was deep inside Pakistan. So we now crossed the threshold as well. And after Pahalgam attack, we conducted Operation Sindoor in 2025. So this essentially provides clarity to the adversary that India will take action if it is hit. Then India has also started with Sudarshan Chakra mission. Recently, Prime Minister Modi from the ramparts of the Red Fort has announced this futuristic initiative. By 2035, all the military as well as strategic infrastructure will be protected through this initiative. It is indigenous, it is futuristic security shield by 2035. And then Prime Minister Modi has also given 5 new normals vis-a-vis relationship with Pakistan. Now, this will provide even more clarity with respect to the conduct. And if you look at the 5 new normals, these are as follows. So first is that there will be a firm response to terror attack. So it doesn't matter if the terror attack is for whatever purpose, right? So terror attacks will be getting a firm response. Second, there will be no tolerance for nuclear blackmail. Pakistan has used this as a shield for a very long period of time, so this will not be taken into account. Thirdly, there will be no distinction between state and non-state actor or terrorist and their sponsors. So everyone will be treated alike. There will be zero compromise on sovereignty. And fifth, terrorism will be first in any talk. In fact, one of the reasons why India took decision on abeyance of Indus Water Treaty was because India wants to handle terrorism issue first. So these are going to be the new normal vis-a-vis Pakistan. Now, apart from the initiatives vis-a-vis the defense front, we are also taking a lot of initiative vis-a-vis the home front, right? And in this regard, India has done really well when it comes to controlling the left-wing extremism. In fact, the violence and casualty related to LWE has reduced up to 85%. Moreover, India has also started with financial inclusion initiatives such as Jan Dhan Yojana, Food Grain Initiative, dairy production increased significantly. Again, these measures are important because one of the reasons why internal security threats come into being is because of developmental concerns. So by including these measures, we are ensuring that development is uh, available, or it is not just for the very well established society members, but it is for the entire people. It is inclusive in nature. Moreover, we have also started with various development in semiconductor mission, which is fostering indigenous chip design and production. So essentially, we had discussed all these three initiatives, all these three major aspects in terms of clarity of purpose, in terms of enhancing our defense capability, and also in terms of self-reliance. Now, if you look at the questions which have come from this topic, directly and indirectly, the first question can be, foreign direct investment in the defense sector is now set to be liberalized. So this question came into 2014 when the defense this FDI was increased to 74% through automatic route. The question was about how it is going to have, what impact it is going to have on Indian defense and economy in the short and long term. Now, in this 2025, in fact, today itself, UPSC has asked 2 essays, all of which can be explained, or they have a huge dimensional approach from this topic. So, for example, UPSC had asked this question: the supreme art of war is to subdue the enemy without fighting. Now, one of the dimensions which you can write here is that India is increasing its deterrence through various initiatives. In fact, the Sudarshan Chakra initiative can be considered as one of the deterrents as well. Right? So you can talk about all these major defense initiatives that the government is taking that will have this impact. Then the second part is about the second essay, again, it was asked in 2025 this year, today. Best lessons are learned through bitter experiences. Again, you can talk about how in the past India's defense initiative or sector was plagued by various problems, and now because of several reforms, we have addressed those problems. You can talk about several issues with respect to Pakistan, right? Because in the earlier time, we could not give a befitting reply to Pakistan because we did not have strategic clarity, right? So now we have learned from the bitter experiences, and now we have charted a specific path. So this ends the first topic. Now we'll move to the second topic, which is about India's urgent need for comprehensive national space legislation. And this basically will be under General Studies Paper 2 IR because there is some sort of treaty associated with it. And then it will also be part of science and technology because outer space is linked here. So if you look at the India's space ambitions and achievements, which we should have some clarity over, is that India is now progressing at a very rapid pace when it comes to space research. In fact, a lot of people have mentioned that it is now at par with US and Russia. In fact, some of the most important success that India has achieved is in terms of Mangalyaan, where it was a cost-effective Mars mission, and Chandrayaan-3, which was essentially involved with soft landing near lunar South Pole. Apart from these two major achievements, in fact, there were multiple achievements. We also have future plans, including the Gaganyaan mission, which is a human space flight. And secondly, we also have Bharat Antariksh Station, which is like International Space Station, but for India, purpose of India, right? So these are some of the initiatives that is under the pipeline. When it comes to the current space of regulatory framework in India, it is majorly regulated under these aspects. So first is about catalog of standards, which provides safety norm for space operation. So what it should be the construction norm, what should be the regulation norm, that is done by catalog of standards. Second, Indian space policy, which encourages private and non-government participation. And within this, we have InSpace, which is Indian National Space Promotion and Authorization Center. It implements the policies, whatever is done by Indian space policy. It covers ground activity and satellite deployment. But if you look at these policies, you can understand what the lacuna is in terms of the framework that India has. All of them are policies or regulations. And you know what? The policies and regulations are not legally binding. And therefore, there is a huge need for India to start with or get a national space legislation. So first, India needs to operationalize the international commitment, especially treaties like Outer Space Treaty of 1967. Now, Outer Space Treaty, it provides the framework in terms of how space or outer space should be regulated in terms of not colonizing any space infrastructure such as Mars or Moon. And for this, India also need this to be ratified in terms of a law for proper execution and clarity. Second, it definitely provides, if a law is there, it will provide legal certainty in terms of the policies, in terms of uh, compliance and predictability. Thirdly, it will overcome operational challenges in terms of ensuring that multiple approvals are, which leads to delays and confusion, can be curbed. Lastly, it can also prevent conflict of interest because once you have government operators and the private operators, then it is very much likely that there would be some conflict of interest. But if there is an independent regulator which can be established through the law, that will prevent the conflict of interest. Because of these reasons, we need national space legislation. The third news is on Kerala becomes India's first 100% digitally literate state. And if you look at the syllabus mapping, it can be part of GS Paper 1 Indian Society because it has certain interlinkages with old or senior citizens, and GS Paper 2 Social Justice because it has education as one of the themes, and GS Paper 3 Cyber Security because of the challenges that arise from it, right? So let's take a look at this news first. What are the drivers of the achievement? Achievement in terms of Kerala achieving the 100% digital literate status. So first thing is that Kerala has a very specific initiative for digital literacy, which is called DG Keralam. And this extends digital revolution and e-services to all the residents across ages. Now, if you compare this with the National Digital Literacy Program that is operational all across the country, it is specifically for two things, or it basically has two limitations. One is that it is only for people who are up to 60 years of age. So there would be a lot of people who are above 60 years of age, and it does not basically cater to those people. Secondly, it caters only to computer literacy. It does not extend to mobile literacy or other aspects, or in fact, to internet literacy through mobile. But Digi Kerala takes into account all these initiatives, all these problems, and it extends to not only people who are 60 years, but also people who are in fact even 90 or 100 years of age. And it also realistically takes into consideration that you need a fluency in not just computer but also in mobile as well. Secondly, it builds on the Akshaya project, which made Malappuram India's first illiterate district. And again, here the emphasis was on community in terms of how community can aid in promoting digital literacy. So, as part of this, members of Kudumb Shri, which is basically the SHG or self-help group, was taken. So their help was taken to spread awareness. Then college students were also roped in for this, right? So again, the community part or non-governmental aspect was one of the major reason why this achievement could happen. Now, if you want to know about exactly what is the meaning of the term digital literacy, so this is what digital literacy means. First, it, in general, it means the ability to understand and use digital technology for meaningful action in daily life. So essentially, it means that you should be able to utilize whatever you are using digital technologies for certain functional aspect. For example, you are using it for ordering groceries, or maybe you're using it to understand some or read about certain text, right? So basically, you are using it for some functional action. Second, what is a digitally literate household? So in order for a household to be a digital literate, at least one member who is above 5 years of age, and there can be now people who are less than 5 years of age also, who is able to operate a computer and use the internet, right? So this is the foundation. Next, let's talk about what are the socio-economic impacts of this. So here we'll talk about the positive impacts. Definitely there could be certain challenges as well, but we'll first talk about the positive impact. So first thing is that it will lead to efficiency of government plans. For example, the CSCs or the service centers, Kisan call centers, they will provide better services and transparency because the end user is able to understand the messages effectively. Then it provides for global connectivity. It provides access to information. Information is the new superpower, right? So in terms of information, and it provides for stronger social and family bonds, especially because a lot of time we are seeing that there is migration happening, not just internally, but also external migration. So global connect, because of understanding of digital literacy, it leads to, or it provides for global connectivity. Thirdly, it provides for democratic participation. It means that it involves citizen in participation of governance. In fact, some of the e-governance initiative, such as MyGov, here you can directly talk to the government and provide your inputs with respect to any major initiative. Or you can file complaints through this initiative called CP-grams. Okay, so it basically means that citizens are now more effectively participating in governance. So it enhances the quality of democracy, making it from procedural to substantive. Then it also allows for financial inclusion. For example, direct benefit transfer, UPI adoption increases because once you understand how these technologies work and the convenience that they provide, their adoption increases, and because of their adoption, it leads to better or more convenience. At it also ensures that there is lesser generation of black money, right? Because all of this also has far-reaching consequences, multiplier effects, right? Then it enhances skills and livelihood because the basic computer skills or ICT skills can provide you opportunities. For example, working as a gig worker or a platform worker. So if you do not know how to use mobile phones for, say, ride booking, or for example, you do not understand what the customer requires, then you'll have a lot of challenges to find work as a gig worker. So again, it provides you a lot of skills and livelihood opportunity. Next, what are the challenges? Challenges essentially comes because of lack of ethical use. So there is a lot of misinformation, WhatsApp forwards, right? Fake news. So in terms of not understanding the gravity of the situation, if you're just looking at the information provided by the social media and you treat it as true, then it is likely that you get radicalized by not understanding whether it is true news or whether it is a fake news. It can also promote or lead to social discord between two communities. Secondly, there is problem with respect to data protection. So recently we have been seeing news of digital arrest. We've been seeing news of people using cyber or the digital platforms for taking money out of people's account, right? So again, it leads to sharing of sensitive info, IDs, password, OTPs, right? All these things. So that can have a major financial implication. Thirdly, it also has cyber security threats in terms of this is the biggest challenge which requires constant vigilance against remote attacks. So cyber security threats can lead to attack on cyber infrastructure or digital infrastructure, especially the infrastructure like UPI, DBT, etc. Right? So these are the challenges. So we need to take into account the challenges to ensure that the process is streamlined. Next, we'll talk about the third or fourth news, which is about Parliamentary Standing Committee on Home Affairs releases report on cybercrime. So in the previous report, we talked about how Kerala was the first or is the first state to achieve digital or 100% digital literacy in India, and we also saw that there were certain challenges. So what exactly does the Parliamentary Standing Committee on Home Affairs talk about cybercrime? This essentially is part of GS Paper 3 cyber security, and also because there is some regulatory bodies associated, it is also part of GS2. So let's take about the major report, what it says about. So the report essentially highlights that there has been a huge transformation in India's journey towards gaining digital strengthening, right? But the problem is that it is also accompanied by a dramatic rise in sophisticated cybercrime. So this talks about the evolution of cybercrime. So earlier, the cybercrimes used to be with respect to phishing or maybe about fake news or things like that. But now it has becoming more and more sophisticated. There is ransomware, there is instances of digital arrest, etc. So they have becoming more and more sophisticated in nature. Secondly, one of the recommendations that the panel makes is that it recommends that the Delhi Special Police Establishment Act of 1946, which allow the CBI to probe cyber crimes across the country without the need for general consent from state government. So essentially what happens is CBI can operate uh, and implement certain anti-corruption measures provided that the states have given general consent. But CBI, it has been reported that 8 states have withdrawn general consent, which means that every time the CBI want to enter into that particular state, it has to take specific consent from that particular state. Therefore, the panel, the committee recommends that we need to change this the Delhi Special Police Establishment Act, on the basis of which CBI has come into picture. So CBI essentially derives its power from the DSP Act of 1946. Even though CBI as such is not a constitutional body, it is not a statutory body, but it derives its power from this. And I think Section 5 and Section 6 of this particular act prohibits, or it talks about the general consent part. So the committee has suggested to amend this to ensure that the CBI does not require general consent for such to probe cybercrime. So in case there is a cybercrimes, there should not be any requirement of general consent. So let's talk about the multifaceted impact of cybercrime. Again, we have already discussed some of the issues with respect to digital literacy. In fact, we talked about some of the key concerns. So here we'll talk about some of the other concerns, including the financial concerns with data as well. So as per the National Cybercrime Reporting Portal, which is NCRP, it has provided the data that more than 53 lakh complaints have been received in this time frame, 2019 to 2024. So this signals that the number of crime rates has been increasing, but at the same time, what it indicates that the awareness of people is also rising. Secondly, cybercrime also has a detrimental impact on your psychology, right? Because at the end of the day, you think that this has happened to you because you are not that competent. It can also lead to very acute self-identity issues, right? So for example, cyber stalking, identity theft, sextortion, deepfakes, they create anxiety, depression, and trauma. Third, it also has a very deep, far-reaching impact as far as national security is concerned. How trafficking can be done for scam, SIM fraud, crypto laundering. Secondly, there can be attack on critical information infrastructure, which can lead to cyber warfare. So we have seen several attacks on AIM's website, or for example, with respect to a minister, sometimes a minister's website was also hacked, right? So we need to understand that many of the schemes or programs of the country is run through digital means, and if those platforms can be hijacked, then it will have a far-reaching consequence. Then we'll talk about the major recommendations here. So first recommendation is with respect to the issue, and here we'll discuss it in terms of the existing issues and the recommendations given by the Parliamentary Standing Committee of the Home Affairs. So first is that existing law problem is that existing law, which is your IT amendment, IT law of 2000, information technology law and its various amendment, it does not differentiate between synthetically generated and user generated content. So basically what it says that we need to ensure that there is some sort of proof of origins from where, what is the source of this information. This will help us to understand whether it is a fake news or not. Secondly, it will help us to understand what person has generated or which person has created this content. Secondly, there is no problem with, we are not facing a lot of problem with respect to uh, monitoring the transaction and data sharing with respect to mule accounts, right? So what the recommendation is that we need to create a formal networks, including all these stakeholders, to watch and report suspicious mule recruitment. So essentially what mule is, that mule is an account where, from where the cyber fraud happens, or this money laundering takes place, right? Third, we have already discussed about the reforms in the DSPE Act with respect to CBI. Fourth, lack of a statutory mandate for compelling data disclosures. So here what it recommends is that we need to have legal and diplomatic measures. So this is the international measure that we can take. So cross-border thing. Fourth, or the last one, the current rules require grievances and nodal officers only for significant social media intermediaries. So the recommendation is that not only for the significant social intermediaries such as Facebook or maybe uh, uh, Twitter or X, it has to be done for the other social media intermediaries as well. And we need to increase the number of nodal officers by appointing regional representations to facilitate faster and region-specific coordination. Okay, so this is to ensure that it is done in a very fast manner, right? So in terms of PYQ, if you look at the previous year questions, so they have asked a lot of questions from cyber security. I have just taken 2 questions to demonstrate you how questions can be framed from this. So firstly, they have asked, what are the different elements of cyber security, keeping in view the challenges in cybersecurity? So we have talked about the challenges here. Examine the extent to which India has successfully developed a comprehensive national cybersecurity strategy. Right? So you can talk about this. Secondly, discuss different types of cyber crimes and measures required to be taken to fight the menace. Again, as a way forward, you can talk about what the Parliamentary Standing Committee is suggesting to address the issues of cyber crime. Next, let's talk about this news about CCPA imposes penalty on Rapido for misleading advertisement. And this is for this syllabus GS2 regulatory bodies, because CCPA is a regulatory body, right? So what really happened was that Rapido started with this initiative of providing auto in 5 minutes. And if the auto is not provided to you by 5 minutes, they will be giving you rupees 50. That was the advertisement that it was leading. But most of the time, what happened was they were not actually following up with this. Uh, they were not taking up, and what they were doing is there were certain disclosures, but that was given in fine print, and the money that was promised to be transferred to the consumers if they did not get an auto in 5 minutes was to be given in terms of Rapido coins that have to be utilized within 7 days. So a lot of people complained to CCPA, and as a result of it, CCPA had taken this measure of imposing penalty of rupees 10 lakh on Rapido. Now, we'll talk about some of the ethical issues with misleading advertisement from the perspective of GS paper 4. So again, this is also part of GS paper 4. So first is that it leads to rights violation, because you have certain right to know what exactly you are consuming and the basic quality of products that you are supposed to get. But if there is misleading advertisement, you do not understand the basic quality of the product that you're going to, or service that you're going to consume. So for example, Red Bull has this famous ad of Red Bull gives you wing. So a lot of people had complained that they did not get any substantial boost from drinking Red Bull compared to any other energy drink. So again, that led to a lot of penalty on Red Bull as well by the regulator in US. Then second, it also is against utilitarianism. Why? Because some of the it can lead to greenwashing, causes long-term harm, especially for the environment. Car ads overstating low emissions, Volkswagen has given this, so it leads to greenwashing, which greenwashing essentially means that you are supporting some claim that your initiative is good for the environment, right? But it is bad for the overall people, so it goes against the criteria of utilitarianism. Third, it is also against Kantian ethics because people are treated as means for profit, which basically goes against the idea of categorical imperative. So false medical health benefit claims are provided, right? Fourthly, it also reinforces social biases. For example, the biasness that fair skin is a good skin or is desirable skin by promoting the fair and lovely creams, right? So again, there it reinforces social biases. Also, finally, it leads to health and safety risk because if the promoters are not providing the health risk associated with a product and explaining or telling that it is going to have a huge impact on your health, then it is not going to be safe for consumption and it creates a lot of health hazard. For example, baby products, herbal remedies advertised despite risk by Johnson's baby powder and ultimately it was withdrawn. So what are the legal frameworks to counter misleading advertisement? You have Consumer Protection Act 2019, and this particular law provides or it gives power to CCPA to investigate all these misleading crimes, misleading advertisement. It defines misleading advertisement. It devises punishment for misleading advertisement as well. Secondly, there is also guidelines for prevention of misleading advertisement by CCPA. So it has provided specific guidelines. So this provides broad guidelines, this Consumer Protection Act, and the guidelines provide specific guidelines. Third, there is Food Safety and Standards Act of 2006, which provides penalties for misleading advertisement, which is essentially related to food quality. Then there is Drug and Magic Remedies Objectionable Advertisement Act 1954, which prohibits advertisement claiming magical properties or unproven benefits. Next, we'll talk about visit of India's External Affairs Minister to Russia. Of course, it is part of GS Paper 2, International Relations, and if you break it down further, it is part of effect of policy and politics of developed and developing countries on India's interest, and also with respect to the major policies agreement, right? So as we know that the secondary sanctions imposed by Trump has come into effect now, and a lot of intellectuals or the political personals in US have been accusing India, and they have been saying that India's oil lobbies are fueling the war that is going on in Ukraine or Russia-Ukraine war. So this essentially what India is now doing is India is trying to diversify its foreign relations. It's trying to reach out to its friends, and also, in fact, India has also tried to reach out to China as well. And the External Affairs Minister, Dr. S. Jaishankar, has countered all the claims that was made by Donald Trump in terms of India being the highest or the biggest buyer of Russia's oil. And it said that in India, China is the most or is the biggest buyer of the oil from Russia. In fact, the External Affairs Minister also mentioned that it was the United States that prompted India to buy oil from Russia because that would help in stabilizing the energy prices. So here, India has taken a very strong and very nuanced approach to ensure that India's national interests are not compromised. So here we'll talk about the major areas of the visit or major outcome of the visit. So this visit was essentially where the External Affairs Minister chaired the 26th session of the India-Russia Intergovernmental Commission on Trade, Energy, scientific technology, and cultural cooperation, which is also known as IRIGC-TEC. So what you need to understand is this is an initiative of a track one diplomacy. So in track one diplomacy, the intergovernmental framework is adopted, and in other tracks, the other stakeholders are used. Secondly, IRIGCTEC is a mechanism set up in May 1992 for regularly monitoring bilateral progress across the sectors of trade and economic cooperation. So as we know that India-Russia trade or India-Russia relations is very much safe and robust as far as defense ties is concerned. But when it comes to trade, when it comes to economic cooperation, it lags a lot. So because of that reason, this initiative was undertaken. Now, when it comes to the key highlights, first, it was the economic dimension. There was a push for program for economic cooperation till 2030, fast track of India Eurasian Union, FTA. So Eurasian Union essentially, Eurasian Economic Union essentially has members like Armenia, Belarus, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, plus Russia. And recently, India has progressed upon the FTA in terms of agreement or terms of reference, and the target is to reach 100 billion trade by 2030. So now India is aggressively expanding towards gaining an FTA with Eurasian Economic Union. Okay. Secondly, there are certain regional issues where India has also advocated that we need to use dialogue and diplomacy, especially when it comes to Ukraine, West Asia, Afghanistan. Thirdly, with respect to connectivity, India has a lot of stake with INSTC, which is International North-South Trade and Transit Corridor. Secondly, Chennai-Vladivostok Corridor and Northern Sea Route. Next, India also wants, and Russia are both equally willing, or they want to reform the global governance sectors, right? Especially UNSC, WTO, and they want to deepen their tie in G20, BRICS, SCO. So essentially, what it indicates that India-Russia ties are not merely bilateral in nature, but they go far beyond that. They have regional as well as global implications. So if you look at the major thrust of India-Russia relationship, the most essential thing that you should remember is that the relationship is characterized as a special and privileged strategic partnership. In fact, India has more than 30 strategic partnership. But this is a special partnership because Russia has several, like we have a very huge historical ties with Russia, and there are institutional mechanisms. There are trade and economic relations. It has deep defense and security cooperations. And there are several global initiatives or global perspective that we have commonality of interest. So again, because of that, India and Russia has huge or very robust partnership. When it comes to PYQ, there was a question with respect to this. What is the significance of Indo-US defense deals over Indo-Russian defense deals discussed with reference to stability in the Indo-Pacific region? Now here you should observe that now UPSC is moving not just with the bilateral relation, but in fact it is going with triangular relations, where we need to understand how India's relationship with one country impacts its relationship with the other country. So again, the idea is that we look at these events not in isolation, but as interdependent. Right? In fact, there's one more pillar called with China as well. Next, we'll talk about the place in news. So the place in news is Lebanon. Why it was in news? Because UNICEF has highlighted that there is acute water scarcity in Lebanon, and UNIFL, which is basically the organization supposed to monitor the imposition of blue line, has observed that there is ongoing Israeli fire along the blue line in Lebanon. So if you look at the map of Lebanon, it is very important because the Middle East sector is quite important from exam perspective. Every year, or in fact, this part has been asked in UPSC multiple times. So this is Lebanon. Towards its north, there is Syria. Towards its south, you have Israel. And then towards its west, you have Mediterranean Sea. And towards its east, you have again Syria, right? So Syria, north and east, then Israel towards the south. So the region is important for Levant and West Asia boundaries we have discussed. Geographical features, it has coastal plain, mountains, etc. And the climate is Mediterranean, right? Which is characterized by wet winters and dry summers. Next, we'll talk about the quick updates. The first one is about Registrar General of India. And the Registrar General of India has asked the states to take steps towards achieving universal registration of births and deaths. Now, it is very essential that there is a data on births and deaths which are updated, because that allows for the government to take appropriate measures in terms of policy, in terms of utilization of various other property deeds, etc. And the authority to undertake the demographic survey, in terms of census survey, everything lies with the body called Registrar General of India, which essentially works within Ministry of Home Affairs. Its key responsibility is ensuring or conducting census, housing and population census, CRS, which is Civil Registration System for compulsory registration of births and deaths. Thirdly, there are other functions including sample registration system, national population register, and mother tongue survey. Next, Aadhaar-based authentication framework for cooperative banks. Now, this is important because it expands or it provides what is known as ease of living, which is one of the key philosophies of the government. So before this was done, or what exactly has happened is UIDIA has unveiled a framework after consultation with Ministry of Corporation and other stakeholders. And what it has done is that Aadhaar-based authentication will be there for the customer onboarding. So earlier, the customer of the cooperative banks used to bring their offline forms or their printed forms. And because of that, there was a lot of delays. Because of that, there was a lot of hassle in terms of processing of their forms and also for their authentication and verification. Now, this approach, by using Aadhaar enabled payment survey for delivering financial services, will lead to further expansion of financial inclusion on one hand, and also lead to ease of living as well, right? So what is the process? State cooperative banks will be registered with UIDIA as authentication and eKYC user agencies, right? And then there will be some cooperatives which are created at the district level. They will be using those internal IDs which are taken from the state cooperative boards, right? So once it is done at the state cooperative board, it will be utilized by the district central cooperative boards. Next is about Indo-Dutch Strategic Water Partnership. This is very important because water is very important natural resource, and it is very important that we learn from countries which has adopted and utilized water preservation at scale. And for this purpose, the Netherlands is a very important partner in this regard. So the objective is to strengthen cooperation in water safety, availability, and quality. There will be a Center of Excellence, Indo-Dutch Center of Excellence on Water, with IIT Delhi and Government of Netherlands. And this initiative was signed in 2022 by Ministry of Jal Shakti from India and Ministry of Infrastructure and Water Management from Netherlands. What are the focus areas? So focus area first is to ensure availability of urban water and to provide or better improve river management, right? AI and geospatial tech in water solutions and water quality and river economy. Next, we have news on Dal Lake. So Dal Lake is hosting its first ever Khelo India Water Games. What exactly is Khelo India? Khelo India is essentially an attempt to improve India's sport culture at the grassroots level, right? How? Through organized talent identification. We have so many sports people who can be excellent at sports, but they never get a chance because we do not have some sort of talent survey or any kind of identification of their talent. So Khelo India basically fills that gap. It provides structured sporting competition and infrastructure development. And this time, this Khelo India initiative for water games is being conducted at Dal Lake. So if you look at the location of Dal Lake, it is there in eastern Srinagar, Jammu and Kashmir. It is at the right bank of Jhelum River. Area is 18 square kilometers, and hydrology, it is fed by Ara River, and it drains via Tel Bal channel. Basins, it is divided into several basins as well. Next, we have International Big Cat Alliance. And why it was in news? Because India has extended the privileges and diplomatic immunities which normally is given to UN officials to the members of or representatives of the IBCA as well, International Big Cat Alliance. So we should know that International Big Cat Alliance is essentially an initiative of India. When India had this 50th anniversary of Project Tiger, and it was established by Government of India via NTCA and Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change. The nature, it is multi-country and multi-agency coalition. The objective of this IBCA, International Big Cat Alliance, is to conserve 7 big cats: tiger, lion, leopard, snow leopard, cheetah, jaguar and puma, out of which jaguar and puma are not found naturally in India. Headquarter, of course, is in India, and the members currently are 12. India is a member of this country, this organization, and it is open to 95 big cat range and non-range nations. Moving on to the next news, which is Smile Scheme. Smile Scheme essentially is a new initiative where, or within this, a new initiative has been taken where 15-day entrepreneurship development program will be provided to selected transgender persons. Okay. So let's take a look at what exactly is Smile program. So Smile essentially refers to support for marginalized individual for livelihood and enterprise. So it is a central sector scheme under the Ministry of Justice and Empowerment. And within this, there are certain 2 sub-schemes. First is that it wants to rehabilitate transgender persons. So you'll see that there are a lot of people from transgender community who will not have their own home, and they will mostly be living anywhere. Like they will be homeless people. So again, this will lead to rehabilitation of their, and then secondly, it will also rehabilitate people or persons engaged in begging. And through what measures? Through rehab support, they will be provided rehabilitation, they will be provided medical care, counseling, education, skill development, economic linkages. Next news is about NATO. So what development is there with respect to NATO is that it is establishing a logistics base in Sweden. So interestingly, Sweden was one of the very country that was natural, that was neutral in its orientation, in its foreign policy posture for more than 200 years, right? But because of the Russia-Ukraine war, it had aligned with NATO to preserve its national interest and sovereignty and security. So if you look at what exactly is NATO, it is a political and military alliance of Europe and North American countries. It was founded in April 1949 through Washington Treaty, and its headquarters is in Brussels, Belgium. The total number of members that it has is 32. Latest is Sweden in 2024. In fact, Finland also joined following the Russia-Ukraine war. Now, wherever you get a topic of international organization, also always make sure that you know about the structure and the mandate of that group. And for mains, you should also understand the major issues in its functioning and what can be done to improve its functioning. So what are the objectives or mandates? So first is for ensuring collective security of all the members vis-a-vis Soviet Union. But problem is that after 1991, Soviet Union ceased to exist, and now it is basically survived by a successor state of Russia. So now their objective is to protect members from any threat whatsoever. And for this, Article 5 is very important, that attack on one state is equal to attack on all. Next, there's a news on Uniform Renewable Energy Tariff, URET. And why it was in news? Because Ministry of Power has scrapped this policy. And again, this is a complex matter, but what happened was in 2025 or 24, the Ministry of Power or government, it started with a policy that sought to provide uniform tariff for the renewable energy projects. So for example, the solar projects would be for 3 units, 3 rupees 3 per unit, or the wind projects would be for 2.5 rupees per unit. So what the government did was provide a uniform tariff for all the renewable energy projects. That was provided, or that was done to ensure that there is predictability and there is not a lot of volatility in terms of the procurement cost. But the problem was that the major procurers were hesitant to sign this power sale agreement because the world was in flux and it continues to be in flux, and there are a lot of tariff uncertainty. So it may lead to that maybe you have done it for a particular tariff, but because of other additional tariff, the entire arithmetic will not work out. So that led to stalled projects, and as a result of that, government has withdrawn this particular tariff policy. Now, way forward can be that we can ensure transparent price discovery and speed up renewable energy deployment. So our target is to achieve 500 gigawatt by 2030. As of now, we have achieved around 150 or 130 gigawatt, right? So this concludes the news today for August 22nd. Make sure that you also attempt some of the questions that would be popping up on your screen, and do not forget to also provide your answers in the comment section. I hope this session was good enough for you. Thank you so much, and all the best.